Matthew and Brady Tkachuk have been around hockey basically their entire lives. Their father was a 500 goal scorer, one of the best Americans to ever do it, getting pictures with all these NHL superstars as young kids. They were destined for the NHL. In this video, we are going to be simulating the entire career of Matthew and Brady Tkachuk. At the end, we're also going to check in and see if they beat any of their dad's records. So we're going to be using a computer team, staying out of the way of Ottawa and Calgary, and seeing which Tkachuk brother has the best NHL career. Headed into year number 1 here, Matthew Tkachuk is on the first line of the Calgary Flames, 87 overall. He has the medium elite potential at 22 years old, so basically the sky is the limit for Matthew Tkachuk. 2 years left on his $6.8 million deal. As for younger brother Brady, only 20 years old, medium elite potential as well. He is on the last year of his entry-level deal, so he's looking to get paid with 2 NHL seasons under his belt. The Ottawa Senators are in rebuild mode. They are getting their prospects ready. As for Calgary, they are in a win now situation. They got Markstrom, they got Johnny Hockey, Matthew Tkachuk. They are ready to win. So as for the standings for year number 1, Calgary makes the postseason, and unfortunately Ottawa just on the outside looking in with 86 points. As for younger brother Brady, he sets a career high with 64 points, up to an 87 overall in the last year of his entry-level deal. As for older brother Matthew, he's up to an 89 overall, and he also sets a career high with 79 points. So good for Matthew Tkachuk getting those points early on. As for the Flames, they get bounced in the second round of the playoffs to the Battle of Alberta, the Edmonton Oilers, and the Oilers go on to have a rematch of the 06 Stanley Cup final against the Hurricanes, and they also lost. Headed into year number 2, Matthew Tkachuk is on the second line left wing, the last year of his deal as well. He's also looking to get paid. The Ottawa Senators, they pay Brady Tkachuk $7.65 million per year for the next 3 years. That's a nice little contract for Brady Tkachuk. The Ottawa Senators kind of load up. They bring back a familiar face in Hoffman. They also have some insane depth down the middle with Chris Tierney, Colin White, Logan Brown. They bring in Tyler Bertuzzi. They also bring in Jared Spurgeon, so they're spending some dough. They're looking to win. They have 2 starting goalies now with Philip Grubauer. The Flames just squeak into the playoffs, 16th in the NHL, where the Ottawa Senators are once again on the outside looking in with 87 points. Brady falls back a little bit. He has a 59-point campaign after almost a 65-point campaign the year prior, but he is a +5 for the first time in his career. Matthew Tkachuk absolutely obliterates his career high, has 95 points, 34 goals, 61 assists. He is going to get a big boy contract. As for the Flames, they also fall in the second round once again, and there is a three-peat rematch of the 06 Stanley Cup final, this time with the Oilers coming out on top. Headed into year number 3 here, and the Flames say goodbye to Johnny Gaudreau after Matthew Tkachuk has a 95-point season. He is now in charge of this team. He's the leader. They do replace him with Philip Forsberg, so that's not bad. Headed over to Ottawa here, and younger brother Brady at 23 years old. He is the second line left winger with Colin White and Thomas Hertl. Their defense is coming together. I think this team is going to be scary in a few years. It's kind of funny though, because I'm using the Nashville Predators just to stay out of the way of both of these teams, and some reason Nashville ended up signing Johnny Gaudreau in free agency, and Calgary decided to sign Philip Forsberg, so we kind of swapped superstars. As for Ottawa, they have a monster year, finishing 5th in the NHL, where Calgary finishes 24th. They're lost without Johnny Hockey, so it's awesome to see Brady get into the postseason. Matthew Tkachuk still has another 90-point campaign, 1 goal shy of 50. Would have loved to see him hit the 50 mark to be the second Tkachuk to ever do it. Obviously his dad did it, but 49 goals, not bad, 90 points, and he signs a huge deal. Well worth it though, $10.4 million for the next 8 years. That is a big boy contract. As for Brady, he continues to have a pretty consistent career here, around the 55 to 65 point mark. He has another 64-point campaign. Even though Ottawa had a fantastic regular season, it does not calculate to playoff success. They're out in the first round. Headed into the 4th year of the simulation, Calgary makes some changes. They bring in Nazem the Dream Kadri. They still got Tkachuk there on the first line left wing. Same with Brady, he is now a first line left winger as well. The center depth on Ottawa in the year number 4 is kind of ridiculous. As for Calgary, they rebound in a huge way, finishing with 111 points. Ottawa also in the playoffs, so for the first time we finally get to see both Tkachuk brothers end up in the postseason. I'd love to see them face off in the Stanley Cup final one time. Brady has a huge year in his contract year, up to an 88 overall. He also sets a career high with 74 points, and is kind of the exact opposite for Matthew Tkachuk. After back-to-back 90-point seasons, he completely falls off the map. 29 goals, 35 assists for only 64 points after back-to-back 90-point years. That sounds like more of a Brady Tkachuk type year, 64 points. As for Calgary, they go on a long playoff run. They finally get rid of Edmonton in the Battle of Alberta, but unfortunately they get swept by the eventual Stanley Cup champions. As for Ottawa, they made it to the second round, but they lose in 6 to the Buffalo Sabres. Headed into the 5th year of the simulation here, and looks like Matthew Tkachuk has lost the first line left winger role. That is now Philip Forsberg's job. Matthew Tkachuk has struggled a little bit the last year. He still has a lot of term left on that big contract. Calgary's looking for Matthew Tkachuk to produce a little more than 64 points. He's getting paid over $10 million. As for Brady, he's also on the second line left wing here in Ottawa. He put up a career year, 74 points last year. He's been really consistent, and since he's so consistent, Ottawa decides to give him all of the money, $11.1 million. That's a lot to pay for 70 points, but the Ottawa Senators do make the playoffs, finishing 11th in the NHL, where unfortunately the Calgary Flames take another step back and finish 27th in the National Hockey League. That's just not good enough. Brady Tkachuk, in the first year of his giant contract, he's playing up to it. He's now up to an 89 overall and puts up 83 points, and it's kind of the exact opposite for Matthew Tkachuk. He's struggling in a big way. He only puts up 60 points. That is not good enough. That is absolutely terrible for Matthew Tkachuk. He hasn't put up numbers like that in a long time. As for Ottawa, they make it to the second round, but they lose against the Florida Panthers. As for Calgary, since they were so bad, they do get a top 5 pick, and they pick a right offensive defenseman, Gregory Sweat. Headed into the 6th year here, it looks like Matthew Tkachuk is now back up on the first line. However, he's playing on his opposite side, playing on the right wing, where he is clearly a left winger. They're mixing it up here in Calgary. They're putting their lines in a blender. They also bring in Nicholas Backstrom. As for Brady, he gets demoted after having a career year. He's now on the third line. I really don't know what's going on. You're paying an $11 million contract to a guy on your third line. As for the Ottawa Senators, they make a big move acquiring Shea Theodore, and I wanted to go check their lineup, and I'm glad I did, because I see Brady's on the 4th line. $11 million on the 4th line. I don't understand what's going on here in Ottawa. Year number 6 is just a weird one. Their defense looks awesome, but you can't be paying $11 million for a 4th liner. Ovechkin decides to call it a career. What a career it was. As for Calgary, they once again have a terrible year, where Ottawa is just on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Year number 6 shows Matthew Tkachuk have a nice bounce back year, 90 points. That's what we're used to seeing from Matthew Tkachuk. And then for Brady, I mean, you can't really fault the guy. He's playing on the 4th line. That is a terrible start to a new contract. I don't know what's going on in Ottawa, but it is definitely peculiar. Here's just a quick look at all of the awards. Obviously, the Tkachuks haven't really won anything. The league is basically dominated by Connor McDavid. We know this happens every single time, but here are the awards for those who are interested. Obviously, the Tkachuks haven't won anything as of year number 6. 7 years in, and Matthew Tkachuk is back in his regular spot at a 91 overall. As for younger brother Brady, I'm not sure what's going on here in Ottawa. $11.1 million, stuck on the 3rd line behind a 79 overall second liner. I don't understand what's going on. 7 years in, Crosby decides to call it quits. And in year number 7, Ottawa and Calgary both are not going to be seeing playoff hockey. They're both hitting the links early on. Brady Tkachuk, 3rd line, line, 45 points. It's not bad. It's a lot of money for a third liner. I really hope not only Brady, but maybe Matthew decides to maybe test free agency when that time comes. Matthew has 69 points. He's up and down, very unpredictable. And since Calgary had such a bad year, they finished 12th in the NHL. They actually won the draft lottery. They move up to 3rd, so they get to pick in the lottery selection, and they hit a home run with Addison here, who is an 82 overall sniper, kind of just what Calgary needs. That is an absolute stud. As for the Ottawa Senators, they pick another Tkachuk, Theo Tkachuk. The Tkachuk bloodlines run deep here in year number 8. The Calgary Flames bring in Steven Stamkos to play with Anthony Cirelli and Alexander Texier. Tkachuk still on the first line. As for Brady, he's moving up to the second line. Their center depth is crazy. Hurdle, Stützle, and 90 overall Christian Dvorak. The team looks good, but I still don't understand why you're playing Ridley Greig over a guy like Brady Tkachuk. The Calgary Flames make the postseason, even though they had less points than Ottawa, who missed the playoffs. You hate to see that. As for Brady Tkachuk, he bounces back, 32 goals, 41 assists. That's what we like to see. Still a lot of money for only 70 points. He had 73, and brother Matthew decides to one-up him with 74. In the year 8 playoffs, Calgary gets eliminated. He gets swept in 4 games by the LA Kings. Headed into year number 9, and the Flames are all in on this Addison kid. He seems to be the future. 19 years old, where 30-year-old Matthew Tkachuk is kind of taking a back seat. 89 overall, still 2 years left on his deal. Brady Tkachuk is still stuck behind that Ridley guy at 80 overall. You hate to see it. I don't know what Ottawa's doing. Play Brady on the first line. Come on, you know it's the right thing to do. The Ottawa Senators still haven't had any playoff success, and that's going to continue because they missed the postseason, 23rd in the NHL. The Flames also miss out on the playoffs once again. Brady Tkachuk has a decent season at 57 points. I think he should start thinking about moving on here. He has 1 year left on his contract at $11.1 million. Matthew Tkachuk has a slow season as well with 2 years left on his deal, so I'm hoping the Tkachuks will eventually move on. The Tkachuk curse is real. The lack of playoff success is kind of unreal for both Matthew and Brady. Speaking of Matthew, he's back on the first line in his last year with the Calgary Flames, hopefully. As for Brady, he's no longer a member of the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa chose Ridley Greig over Brady Tkachuk, and Tkachuk, he's off to Tampa Bay. He signs a 4-year deal at $7 million per. Now, Brady is still a very serviceable player, but you can see here by the draft lottery odds, Tampa has a couple of top 10 picks, so that means they didn't do that great. But as for Brady Tkachuk, he was a minus 38, 50 points in his first year. It wasn't a great year for Brady Tkachuk and the Tampa Bay Lightning. As for the Calgary Flames, Matthew has 74 points in the last year of his deal. You saw they were picking 2nd overall, so they had a terrible year. No playoffs for Matthew or Brady, and surprisingly in year number 11, Matthew decides to re-sign with the Calgary Flames. I seriously thought he was going to be gone after the 10th year, but he decides to stick around. Brady is also sticking around with the Tampa Bay Lightning at an 87 overall. Tampa has a great year, finishing 9th in the NHL. As for the Calgary Flames, they just make the playoffs with 89 points, just squeaking in. Brady has another good bounce back year with 74 points. He's been pretty consistent. If he gets top 6 minutes, he's going to give you 60 to 80 points no matter what. Despite the playoff success, Brady has been pretty much Mr. Consistency. As for Matthew, he bounces back in a big way with 91 points at 33 years old, so he's found a new life here in Calgary on that new contract. As for the Flames, they get eliminated in the first round, so does Tampa Bay. Headed into the 12th year here, and Matthew Tkachuk, after having 90 points, gets demoted to the 3rd line. I don't know what it is. The Tkachuk curse, like Brady happened to, had a career year, and he's on the 3rd and the 4th line. I just don't get it. As for Brady, though, he is back up in the top 6 with the Tampa Bay Lightning at 32 years old. He's still got a couple of years left on that contract he signed. He has a 79-point campaign. As for brother Matthew, he has a 74-point campaign. So both brothers are producing pretty consistently here. The Calgary Flames miss out on the playoffs where Tampa Bay gets in, but they are out in the first round. I kind of feel like a broken record here, but year number 13 shows Brady Tkachuk bounce up to an 89 overall at 33 years old. As for Matthew, he is on the 4th line. It took me a second to realize where he was. I didn't see him on the top 6. I thought he might have got traded and I missed it, but he's all the way down on the 4th line. So I don't know if there's some bad blood between management and Matthew Tkachuk, but it's not looking pretty here. And both teams, talk about not looking pretty, finished 27th and 28th in the NHL. Brady leads the Tampa Bay Lightning in scoring with 74 points, 30 goals, 44 apples, a very Brady Tkachuk-like season, and it's the exact opposite for Matthew. He was essentially hitting 4th line minutes all year, had 26 points, a -1, just an absolute nightmare for Matthew Tkachuk, a guy who's poured his heart and soul into the Calgary Flames, and this is how they're treating him. Year number 14 shows him signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's Matthew Tkachuk, and I was looking, maybe I'm missing him, am I blind, where is he? Is he playing defense? Is he a goalie? No, he's riding the pine. He's scratched. Matthew Tkachuk signs a 1-year deal worth just over $2 million, and they're scratching him. Talk about a new team as well. Brady Tkachuk, he signs with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He moves on from Tampa Bay. Both Tkachuk brothers in the last year of their deal, they now find themselves on new franchises. One is in the top 6 and one is in the press box. So I'm hoping that's going to work out for Matthew Tkachuk there in Toronto. Toronto has a great year despite not even using Matthew Tkachuk. They finished 3rd in the NHL, and as for the Columbus Blue Jackets, they finished 13th. So both brothers are in the postseason once again. Brady has a decent year, 63 points. He is 34, so he is going to start slowing down here. And as for Matthew, he sat in the press box the entire year. They didn't even have the common decency to put him in the minors. Unbelievable. And then, of course, first round exit. Year number 15 shows Brady Tkachuk once again on the first line with Patrick Laine. He's found a nice home here in Columbus. Hopefully they can do something in the playoffs. As for Matthew, he was talking to Brady and Brady said nothing but good things about Tampa Bay, so he decides to sign a contract in Tampa. Hopefully they treat him better than the damn Leafs did. A very similar contract, $2.5 million, but this time he's actually gonna play. The Blue Jackets make the postseason, finishing 7th in the league, where the Tampa Bay Lightning and Matthew Tkachuk finished 28th. Brady in year number 15 has a pretty good year, 79 points. He's been, again, Mr. Consistency. It's unbelievable the points he's put up, just consistent year after year after year. And as for the postseason, you guessed it, that is a first round exit. Matthew Tkachuk can't take it anymore. Connor McDavid calls it quits. ADB calls it quits as well. So does Matthew Tkachuk. With 3 teams, well, technically 2, he had 1,400 games played, 1,200 points. We'll go through his stats in depth, check out his playoff stats as well. They weren't pretty. Year number 16, finally Brady starts to drop off a little bit. He is 36 years old, down to an 81 overall on the 3rd line. He's looking for that one last playoff. Maybe they can go on a miracle run. They do make the playoffs with 45 wins and 93 points. He only has 45 points, still pretty good for an 81 overall, Mr. Consistency, and headed in to the postseason. Bump-a-da-dum, a first round exit. Unbelievable. I can't believe it. Amazing. The first time that's ever happened. Seriously, the playoff jinx for the Tkachuks is unbelievable. Brady is sticking around one more year with Columbus at a 79 overall, 37 years old. He wants some sort of playoff success, even a 3rd round, even going to the conference final. That's all the poor guy wants. And boom, a first round exit, and that is all he could take as well. Following in Matthew's footsteps, he has 1,536 games played, less points than Matthew, but it's the playoffs that really stick out to me. Only 66 playoff games. That is unbelievable. What a crazy, weird, strange, peculiar career for both Brady and Matthew. Before we broke down their stats, I wanted to look at the record book for the Flames, and most mostly the Ottawa Senators, but the Tkachuks didn't hold any records for either team, so they didn't really leave their mark at all. They won no awards and didn't leave any records. It is kind of cool to see some new records though in the NHL. Alex Ovechkin obliterated the goal record with 138. Patrick Laine right behind him. McDavid, Gretzky, McKinnon, most points. McDavid had to over 2,000. That's crazy. Most assists, Jumbo Joe. All right, let's break down the Tkachuk brothers. It's going to be up to you guys to see who had the better career. So let's start here with Matthew Tkachuk. He played for 2.5 teams. I don't know what you would call that stint in Toronto, where he basically sat in the press box and ate hot dogs for the entire year, but he basically played for the Calgary Flames for the majority of his career before ending it off with the Tampa Bay Lightning. In his entire career, he didn't have a single award or any Stanley Cups. He had 1,441 games played, 457 career goals, 757 apples for 1,214 points. And yes, if you're keeping track, that does beat out Keith Tkachuk. Keith Tkachuk had just over 1,000 points. Matthew Tkachuk has that over his old man. However, he doesn't have the penalty minute record because Keith Tkachuk has 2,219 penalty minutes, where Matthew Tkachuk just cracked the 1,000 mark. Now, as for the playoffs, this is kind of shocking. He only played in 66 games, 20 goals, 28 assists, 48 points. Honestly, it was a good career, 1,200 points, but nothing special to really show for it. As for brother Brady, he followed in older brother's footsteps, playing with 3 teams and not winning any cups or any awards. He played more games than his brother Matthew and had less points. He had 1,162, but Brady was just consistent. There was years where Matthew Tkachuk kind of struggled, but Brady was just the consistent 50 to 70 point guy. Despite having no awards and no cups to show for his career, he also played in 66 career playoff games. This time he beats his brother. He has 56 career points in the 66 games. So how weird is it that both Tkachuk players end up playing the exact same amount of games, 66 games in the playoffs? So weird. It's really hard for me to say who had a better career because both of them put up good individual numbers, but there was no hardware to show for it. I guess since Matthew had more points, you could argue Matthew was the better player. You could also argue that Brady was the better player because he had some more points in the postseason. It's going to be up to you guys in the comments. Let me know who you think had a better career. I'm interested to see what the debate's going to be. One of the stranger career simulations I've ever done, that's for sure. What guys do you want to see next? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up or a comment, and I will see you guys in the next one.